Arjun, give me that.
Welcome everyone to this second part of our journey to ancient temples of India, talk by Shefali Vaidya. This is on popular demand after success of our first talk about a couple of weeks back. We will start at about 4:05. Until then, we'll wait for people to gather. Thank you. It's 4:05. We'll start our webinar for today. Shwetaji, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you, Manojji. Thank you, Manojji. Namaste, everyone, and welcome to FISI's Positive Connect webinar series. For this session, we are delighted to join hands with Indic Academy, an institute based on Indic civilizational thought. I would like to begin with welcoming and introducing our speaker for the day, Shefali Vaidya, who is an award-winning independent writer, newspaper columnist, and social media influencer. She's an inspirational figure known for her conviction and passion with which she speaks and creates awareness on thought-provoking subjects. People identify with her thoughts. Probably that's been brewing inside them too. And she has been able to express them with courage and insight. She has a huge fan following on social media. On a side note, she has also made saris a very cool style statement. This session is a continuation of our last webinar on the ancient temples of India. In the previous session, Shefali ji had elaborated on the science behind the temple structures and the intricate architecture, which in varied ways symbolized Sanatan Dharma's core spiritual philosophy. She had also talked about the sadhana and precision of the sculptures in that era, who carved such wonderful sculptures that speak to us even today. There was indeed a detailed thought out process by ancestors in building the structures, and Shefali ji had helped us understand this aspect more. We were very intrigued by that session and we wanted to know more. So here we are, and we are so excited to continue this session with her today. Before I invite Shefali ji to speak, just a quick note to our viewers today. If you have any questions, please post them on the comments section of our Facebook live page wall, and we shall take them up with Shefali ji during the question and answer session. We hope to address all your questions. Over to you, Shefali ji. A very warm welcome again.
Thank you so much, Shweta. And it's a pleasure to come back. And I'm very excited about today's talk because I can actually show you some great pictures of the temples that I like. Today's session is going to be mainly about stories. I'm not going to bombard you with any technical information or going to fill your mind with any technical terms. It's just going to be a journey through temple architecture and temple sculptures that I have loved over the years and how it has impacted me profoundly. I might also add here that I'm curating a full webinar for Indic Academy, which is going to be held on next Saturday on the 20th in the morning from 9:30 to 1:30. And that will have 4 sessions, which will elaborate a lot on temple architecture, the origin of it, the technical parts of it, what is the real meaning about our temples and everything. But today, you can call it an art appreciation talk. It's just, I'm trying to communicate my passion and my love for Indian temple architecture and how it has helped me discover myself. It has helped me become a better Sanatani. And to be a better Sanatani is to be a better human being. And I can say that with a lot of confidence. So in our last session, I had said that over the years, the temples developed from being a simple square structure where there would be just a tabernacle and a murti, and people would go and pray to the murti, to elaborate multi-storied structures. And as time went by, there were 3 different distinct styles of temples. One is the Nagara style, which is mainly seen in north of India. The Dravida style, which is mainly seen in south of India, and the Odishan style of temple architecture, which is a distinct style in itself. So my webinar next Saturday will have separate sessions on these three different styles, as well as it will have a session on what is the philosophy behind the temples. So I'm not going to talk about that, but I want to quote a few of our Shastras. So our Agama Shastras and our Shilpa Shastras, these are the texts on which the temple construction process is outlined. And they don't just talk about just putting stone over stone and building a structure. It talks about the philosophical base. It talks about how building a temple is like a yagya, it's like a sacrifice, and how the different images have to be carved. What does the sculptor have to follow? What kind of spiritual practices the sculptor has to follow to carve the images? How do you build temples? How do you build different kinds of temples? How you select a place for the temple? How do you go about first doing a puja of the site, which is called a Bhumi Puja, because you ask forgiveness from Mother Earth, because you're propitiating Mother Earth and saying that, okay, this is where I'm going to build a temple. What are the rituals to be followed? And how building a temple was considered to be a spiritual practice. It was a yoga, as you needed to have a lot of jnana to build a temple. The Agni Purana describes the temple in very human terms. So Kalash is referred to as the hair of the cosmic Purusha. The Amalaka, or the circular thing that you see, you'll see it in the pictures later, that you see it on top of a Nagara temple, was referred to as the head of the cosmic Purusha. Shukanasi literally means parrot nose. That is a small protrusion that is on the lower side of the Shikara. That was compared to the nose of the Vastu Purusha. Then there is a term called Jangha, which literally means Jangha, which means thighs. So the thighs of the temple means the thighs of the Vastu Purusha, of the cosmic Purusha. And the Murti inside the Sanctum Sanctorum is our soul, is our Atman, is the Jiva, is the Prana that's inside us. Which is why today uniformly, you go to any temple in India, you will find the Garbhagriha to be very dark. There is no light there. There are no windows there. There is just supposed to be just an oil lamp lighting the Murti. Because that is the soul, that is your jiva, and it is supposed to be lit only by your inner light of spirituality. You still see that practice in the southern temples. You go to any temple from Guruvayur to all the temples in Tamil Nadu, you will see that even though there are electrical lights outside in all the Sabha Mandapas, in everywhere else, inside the Sanctum Sanctorum, there are only brass diyas which will have this flickering light of the lamps. And you can see the Murti, and the Murti sees you. It's a dual process, because you believe that the prana, and when you see each other, when you commune with the higher reality, when the jiva inside you tries to commune with the Shiva inside the temple, you are supposed to see it in that flickering light, because it's supposed to remind you that it is a light within you. It's a light of spiritualism. It's a light of knowledge. It's the light of Vidya within you. Then we come to how the Shilpis construct the images. This is very, very instructive. Ananda Kumaraswamy has written 2 essays on the Hindu view of art, in which he talks about how the Shilpin is supposed to meditate on the construction material, stone or wood or whatever he or she is going to use to carve the murti out of it. So the Shilpi establishes images in the temple or carves the temples by first meditating on the deity who is the object of his devotion. The image, the Shilpin then recites the Dhyana mantra to himself silently, describing the deity to be described, whether it's Vishnu, whether it's Durga, whether it is Surya, whether it is Sri Ganesh. And he invokes that deity and he prays to the deity and he says that, give me your vision the way you want to be seen. Because the premise here is that Ganesha wants to manifest himself, and the material, the block of stone or the block of wood is just a medium, and the deity has to manifest itself. The deity has to show itself to the sculptor before the sculptor even puts the hammer and the chisel to the material. So there is a process. The Shilpin is supposed to purify himself internally as well as externally. There is a prescribed time for which he is supposed to be celibate. He is supposed to not eat any non-veg or any abhaksha. He is supposed to practice yoga and meditation. And then he's supposed to look at the construction material, the block of wood or the block of stone, and he's supposed to recite the Dhyana mantra to himself, and he's supposed to focus all his entire energy on that mantra, on that deity, and he is to pray. And at some point, the Shilpin will get a vision of what the deity should look like, and it's only then, when the vision is clear, that the Shilpin can put the hammer and chisel on the block. And that is why the murti that you see is already existing in that block of wood or in that block of stone, and the Shilpin only has to take it out. That is the premise on which our Shilpa Shastras are based. Okay, can anybody be a Shilpin? If tomorrow you get a degree in sculpture from fine arts from some university, can you just take a hammer and chisel and carve out a murti? No, it doesn't work like that. A Shilpin is supposed to be trained. He's supposed to be a master of Atharva Veda. He's supposed to know the Vedic mantras that are used to invoke that particular deity. He's supposed to be a master of the 32 Shilpa Shastras. He's supposed to be a good person. He's supposed to be faithful to his wife. He's supposed to be very learned. He's supposed to be constantly in the pursuit of knowledge. Knowledge not just in arts, but knowledge of geology, knowledge of geography, knowledge of sciences, knowledge of scriptures, knowledge of spirituality. He has to be a logical person. He has to be a detached person. And he has to be, in short, a yogi to be able to carve out or to be able to manifest that deity in that particular block of wood or build that temple. And such Shilpins, let me tell you, that they commanded tremendous respect in ancient India. Not only were they paid well, they were treated with reverence and respect because their art was considered to be divine. And even the king himself stood up when a Shilpin entered. And they had their own guilds, they had their own laws, they had their own rules and regulations. And there was a hierarchy under a chief sthapati. There were Shilpins. There were, last time I talked about it, there were craftsmen called takshakas who would carve out the wood. There would be carpenters called vadakin, and there would be shilpis who would carve out the fine sculptures. And together they would work like a well-oiled machine, and they would build temples. And once one temple was built and once the final Prana Pratishtha happened, then the whole group of that particular guild of craftsmen, of Shilpins and Takshakas and Vadakins, that particular guild would move to a different place where somebody else may have, some other king may have hired him to build a temple. Now, again, another question people will ask in today's socialist interpretation is like, oh, these temples were only built by rich kings and common people didn't have any role to play with. So basically, it was just exploitation of common people, and through that money, kings built temples. No, only kings did not build temples. Temples were built, small temples were built by ordinary people also. And even when a king was building the temple, all the people in the surrounding areas, they contributed to it. They either provided grain, they provided their efforts, they provided their shramas. Rich merchants provided money for specific sculptural parts or subsidiary temples, which they donated. And why did you build a temple? You built a temple because it would bring great fame to not just to you, but to your entire kula. It would gain you merit, punya, so that your soul would, when you die eventually, it would be closer to attaining moksha. It would be a legacy you would leave for the future generations. And it would be a lasting commemoration of either a victory that you have done or something great. You had a child after many years, or a drought in your kingdom ended, or sometimes also because there was a drought in your village and you wanted to give people some employment. So that's why you built lofty temples. Like in Patan, there is a beautiful step well called Rani Ki Bav, which is actually a step well, okay? They could have simply built a plain step well without any decoration, without any sculptures. But the step well that Rani Rupmati built, That sculpture is actually an inverted temple. It's a 5-story temple, and right in the center is a murti of Vishnu, and under that there is water. And people would, that was built for an entirely secular purpose, because Patan actually had a drought and the queen wanted a permanent source of water conservation. So that's why the stepwell was built. But there was no need to decorate it, there was no need to beautify it, there was no need to turn it into an object of devotion or worship. But that is our aesthetic, that is our sense of art, that is our desire to create something so sublime and beautiful. Today if you go to Rani Ki Bav in Patan, you would be amazed at how anyone could even visualize something so incredibly beautiful. So constructing a Hindu temple is not just an art. It was an endeavor that was at the cusp of both art and science. So to build a Hindu temple, you had to know not only your scriptures, you had to know spiritualism, you had to be a practitioner, you had to know geology, you had to know geography, you had to know art, you had to know music. It was a what we call a multidisciplinary approach in today's lingo. That was the endeavor, how our people built temples in ancient India. Now I'll show you the presentation, but before I go to the presentation, let me also tell you one more thing. Usually the left historians, they don't even mention about the destruction of Hindu temples, and when they do, they give you two reasons for it, and they say that okay, Islamic invaders did destroy a few temples. They will never mention the number of 40,000 which has been documented, but they will say okay, maybe they may have demolished a couple of temples here and there, but they did it not because of bigotry, but they did it because the temples were rich and they needed money. And second excuse that they give is that they destroyed temples. So what? Even Hindu kings destroyed temples of other religions, of other kingdoms. But that is not true. Our way of showing respect was never about destruction. The Pallavas and the Cholas, the Pallavas and the Chalukyas of Karnataka and the Pallavas of Kanchi had a long-term feud going for generations. So one king would attack Vatapi and win over Vatapi. Then the next generation, the Vatapi king would come back and attack Kanchi. This back and forth happened, but they did not destroy a single temple in each other's territory. The only thing they probably did to establish their supremacy was they would actually take the murti with procession, with music, with pomp, and establish it in a temple in their kingdom and do the formal pratishtha of that murti in their kingdom, and they worship it. This was told to me by Meenakshi Jain, and she's written a whole book about it, The Flight of Deities, and it is well documented also. It is said that when the Chalukya king came to Kanchi and he saw the Kailashnathar temple, the Pallava temple, beautiful Pallava temple of Kailashnathar in Kanchi. There is a Kailashnathar temple in Ellora also. I'm going to talk about that. But when he saw it, he was so enamored by the sculptures around it that he just made himself prostrate in front of the murtis of Shiva, and he actually donated more money to the temple, and he ensured that the worship of the temple would continue. That was the kind of respect our people gave. Even in the Hoysala era, which is in 13th century in Karnataka, the king was a Hindu, his queen was a Jain. They built both Jain basadis as well as Vishnu temples, and there was never this concept of I will destroy your temple and establish supremacy because my god is better than yours or my temple is better than yours. So that is one gigantic lie that we have been taught for so many years. Now I'll move to the presentation. Can you please start the presentation for me?
Yes, sure.
Next,
It's on
please.
now, Shefali ji.
Yeah, next, please. Okay, I'll start with what we were and I'll show you pictures. Please stop here. I'll show you pictures of some great temples that we have created, which are representational temples. See, it's very difficult to talk about 2000 years of temple building in 1 hour. I cannot do justice. One lifetime is not enough to study Indian temple architecture and what Hindu temples are all about. In 1 hour, I can only give you like half a drop in this infinite ocean of beauty and grace. But this is just to tell you what we had, what we were, the kind of sublime beauty that we created, and not just in one part of India, but from Ase to Himachal, from Kashmir to Kanchipuram, we had such edifices of such great beauty, of such sublime beauty. Next, please. This is one of my most favorite temples, most favorite monuments in the entire world. It is the Kailashnath temple. It is, all of you probably have heard of it. It's a monolithic temple. It's a 3-story temple that's carved out of one solid mountain near Aurangabad in a place called Ellora, or Verul as it is known in Marathi. So as you can see, it is a fully completed Dravidian temple, only it is not built from bottom up. It is actually carved down from top to bottom. It has everything. It has a Nandi Mandap, it has the outer prakara, it has the side galleries, it has the Sanctum Sanctorum, it has the Sabha Mandap, it has the subsidiary shrines, it has a victory tower, as you can see. It has 2 life-size sculptures of elephants on both sides, which are sadly now mutilated. But it's a temple of such breathtaking beauty. And to think that somebody actually saw this huge mountain and said, okay, I'm going to carve out a 3-story temple out of it. It boggles your mind even today. I mean, people make a huge big deal about the stone carved architecture of Petra. If you actually go to Petra, you'll see that only the facade is carved. Inside, there is nothing. But this temple, it's like one day is not enough for you to see. I have been to this temple at least 15 times, and every single time I visit this temple, I discover something new. It is a thing of such sublime beauty that I don't have words to describe it. If you have not seen it, next time you are in India or you are traveling, please put this temple on your travel map. If you haven't seen Kailash temple, you have seen nothing in life. Next, please. This is another temple that I love. It is the big temple, the Perikovil. It is the Brihadishwara temple of Tanjavur, built by Rajaraja Chola more than 1,000 years ago. And as you can see that even this temple is actually 3-storied, and the vimana of the temple, that is the triangular conical structure, is so tall, and on top of it is a stupi, and that stupi is supposed to be that one stone which is, you know, really heavy. So can you imagine how they must have put that stone? Last time I talked about it, how they had a ramp of 13 kilometers, and it is said that they made elephants go up and put that stupi there, stone there, and then go down another 13 kilometers in another direction. Next, please. Next, please. This is a very small, very compact and stunningly pretty temple. Compared to the big temple of Tanjavur, this is really pint-sized. But this is also one of my most favorite temples. This is near Mysore. It's a place called Somnathpura. This is a Hoysala temple. And like all other Hoysala temples, it is profusely and very intricately carved, and not 1 square inch of the wall or any part of the temple is left without any carvings. And as you can see, the platform, the Jagati of this temple is stellate or star-shaped, as is the case of all Hoysala temples. This is a Trikuta temple, as in it has these 3 conicular vimanas, and under those vimanas, there are 3 sanctum sanctorums. And usually, whichever deity is being worshipped, in this case, it is Krishna, you will have 3 forms of Krishna, 3 different forms of Krishna, or 3 different forms of Vishnu in these 3 different Garbhagrahas. Next, please. This is another very small temple. This is in Odisha. And it's this typical Odisha style. That mandapa is called Jagmohan in Odia style. You will hear more about it in a full session next Saturday in the temple's webinar. That is not really, I'm not an expert in Odisha architecture, but I just wanted to show you the beauty of it. It is such a small, such a beautiful, tiny temple, and it has a very beautiful Makar Torana outside it, which I'm not sure if you can see it or not, but it's a beautiful, gorgeous temple, and it's in Bhubaneswar, and Bhubaneswar is full of temples. It's called a city of temples, and most of these temples have fortunately survived without any major damage. So please go to Bhubaneswar, please see these temples and see for yourself what our ancestors have created. Next, please. This is the example, the perfect example of fully developed Nagara style temple. This is in Khajuraho. Many of you may have already been there. It's famous for all the wrong reasons. It's famous only for the erotic sculptures, which are not even 10% of the sculptural wealth that is there in the temples of Khajuraho. As I explained last time, the erotic sculptures are mainly only on the outside, on the exterior of the temple, and they are supposed to remind the bhakta or the devotee that, okay, this is your material life, this is your vasanas, these are your desires, but leave them here and climb up the steps and elevate yourself, so that when you go inside, you leave this world behind and you enter into a different plane, you enter into a spiritual plane. If you can see all these things, it explains what are the different parts. You can see that that amla shaped amlaka. You can see the shikhara of this temple. You can see the multiple mandapas, and see how beautiful, how gradual the progression is. It's a huge temple, but at no point does it look ungainly or out of proportions. It's like it's perfect. It's perfect the way it is. Next, please. This is the Kailashnath temple in Kanchipuram that I told you, one of the Pallava gems. And this has that parikrama path, which I talked about last time, where the parikrama path is completely enclosed, and there is a very small entrance to it, in which you have to actually crawl inside. And once you are inside the parikrama path, there are supposed to be no lights. Now they have put electricity lights, but traditionally there are supposed to be no lights. It's supposed to be a completely dark passage, and you can barely walk. Only one person can walk erect in that passage, and then you do the full circumambulation, and when you come out, there is an even smaller hole, and from that you have to crawl out. So the whole Pradakshina Path is supposed to give you a taste of what happens of birth and life cycles. So when you enter the Pradakshina Path, you enter the life after death and the Pitraloka, and then you move around, and then you take a rebirth, and then you come out again from your mother's womb, and that is your rebirth. So that is supposed to constantly remind you that our life is cyclical. So in order to ensure that you get a good birth in the next life, or attain moksha, which is the ultimate goal, you have to gain good karma, and you have to remember that you have to lead a life of dharma, and you have to be righteous in your life. Next, please. This is another beautiful Chola temple. This is Airavateshwar, I think. And I just liked it because there is this gentleman I got for the perspective. He just outside and he just praying, and the devotion that he had, he didn't even go to the temple. He didn't need to go to the temple. But we say na that even if you just do the Mukhadarshan of the Shikhara, that's enough. That's more than enough, because the Shikhara is like the cosmic Purusha's head. So if you can't go into the temple, if you just look at the Shikhara and you pray and you fold your hands, that's enough. Next, please. Now I'll come to sculptures. These are the temple edifices. These are the temples, whole temples that our ancestors had built, the surviving temples. There are many in really, really bad conditions, but we'll talk about that later. Now I will take you to the individual sculptures. So the next deck of slides that you're going to see are the images of Lord Shiva, which are done mostly according to the Shivagamas in central and southern India. And there are some stories in the life of Lord Shiva which you will see again and again. And depending upon those stories, those depictions of those particular episodes in Lord Shiva's life, you will see reflected in these sculptures. And depending upon what incident has been chosen, that murti has a different name. For example, the murti where Shiva is holding his locks for Ganga to come down from the celestial heavens is known as the Gangavatarana Murti. You will see the Gangavatarana Murti in Ellora, you will see it in Kailashnath temple, you will see it in almost all the big Shiva temples, all the big Chola temples, you'll see it in Chalukya temples, you'll see that in Pallava temples. And the theme is the same. You will see Shiva and you'll see his beautiful Jatamukut, his locks, and he's holding on a lock, holding out a lock, and there is Ganga who's coming down from the skies. And you will usually see an angry Parvati because her hand is shown like this in Vismay Mudra. She's asking her husband, she's jealous because Ganga is coming, and Ganga is also a beautiful woman, and she's asking her husband, why are you doing this? So this theme you will see, and it's very beautifully depicted. And the beauty of it is Gangavatarana Shiva in the Kailash temple of Ellora will have practically the same elements as a Gangavatarana Shiva in Chola temple, but yet they will be totally different. And that's another beauty of the Indian concept of art, because if you see that, you will see it in all our performing arts or all our arts as well. So a rag, for example, sung by Bhimsen Joshi and Pandit Jasraj will be the same rag. It will have the same notations. It will probably even have the same bandish. But the way they'll sing it, you will know immediately, and not just from the voice, but from the singing styles, that it is Panditji singing or it is Pandit Jasraj singing. Similarly, even if the sculptures are the same of the same incident in Lord Shiva's life, you will still see that this is a Rashtrakuta way of depicting it, this is the Chola way of depicting it, this is the Pallava way of depicting it, and this is the Hoysala way of depicting it. Next, please. So this is Lord Shiva doing the Tandav at Kailashnath temple. And see how beautiful his movements are, how lyrical. He's actually stopping mid-movement. If you can see that, it doesn't look static. None of the sculptures look static. It looks dynamic. It looks like he's about to move, and he's stopped in between. It's like a camera which has taken a rapid, high shutter speed picture of a movement stopped mid-motion. It's just beautiful. Next, please. This is Shiva. Unfortunately, the light was not that great. This is also from the Kailashnath temple in Kanchi. Here he is shown as a Bhikshatana Shiva. The story is there were some rishis in Darukavana, and they had gone wayward. And Lord Shiva wanted to teach them a lesson. They had strayed from true worship. So he pretended to be a mendicant, and Parvati came with him. And when he reached Darukavana, the Rishi Patnis all fell for this beautiful young version of Shiva. And the Rishis, they fell for Parvati. And that is when there is a fight, and then Lord Shiva teaches the Rishis a lesson. But the way the Murti is shown, he's shown wearing khadaos, he's unfortunately you can't see his face, but he's shown with the beautiful curls, the contours of his body, they're so beautifully depicted that it's another example of very sublime art. And he has that mysterious smile on his face. In fact, all the murtis there have that mysterious smile on Lord Shiva's face, which that Chalukya king is supposed to have liked very much. Next, please. This is again Lord Shiva, but this is depicted in the Hoysala way. And here he is killing Gajasur. This is again a favorite theme of sculptures from the Rashtrakuta style, from the Pallava style, from the Chola style, from all different styles. In Hoysala style, it's super decorated. It's very, there are a lot of flourishes. There are a lot of, normally Lord Shiva is shown with minimum jewelry, but in Hoysala sculptures, he's shown with full mukut, all the jewelry. The way he's standing on the head of Gajasur, the the demon in elephant shape. And he has killed him and has skinned him, and he'll finally wear that skin, that Gajacharma, around his waist. That is why he's known as Krittivasa. But here, if you see, he's holding the skin of the elephant with his top two hands, and in all the other hands, he has his different ayudas. And the way he's standing, he's dancing, and the whole composition of the picture, it doesn't look, there is so much going on, but yet it doesn't look cluttered. It doesn't look like, you know, you don't want to see it anymore. It's like every element of the sculpture is proportioned so beautifully that you could imagine sculpture looking like anything else. Next, please. Next, please. Oh, this is one of my most favorite murtis. This is Ananda Tandav Shiv from Kailash, from Ellora Caves, not from Kailash, it's from some other cave, the number of which I forget. But the way it's been depicted, the kind of expression that the Lord has on his face, that half smile, the way he's standing, he's wearing that Gajacharma. In that Gajacharma, actually, there is the foot of the deer is still not Gajacharma, he's wearing Mrugacharma, the deer skin. And the foot of the deer is also shown as a part of this Mrugacharma. And there are all the other Ganas and Devas who gathered to watch him. And he's not bothered. He is completely lost in the divine ecstasy of his dance. And it's Ananda Tandav because he's happy, because the universe is happy. It's a dance that radiates serenity. It's a dance that radiates peace. And the way the sculptors have done it is like it's always lit like this. It's got that chiaroscuro effect, half light, half shade. And because of that, the sculpture speaks to you. It's not a static sculpture. It's like if you stay there enough, and if there are no other people talking loudly as our tourists are wont to do, and if you go there either early in the morning or late in the evening, and you just sit there in meditation in front of this murti, and you close your eyes and you open your eyes, you actually start hearing the damru in your ears, and you feel like Lord Shiva is going to come out of that frame any moment and dance. It's an incredible feeling. I'm getting goosebumps just talking about it. It's one of the most beautiful sculptures I've ever seen. Next, please. This is from the Brihadishwara temple at Gangaikonda Cholapuram, which was built by Rajaraja Chola's son, Rajendra Chola. And this murti the theme is called Chandesha Anugraha. Chandesh was the great devotee of Lord Shiva. And because of that, Lord Shiva became prasanna and he honored him with a garland. But here the king was such a great devotee of Lord Shiva that he made the face of Chandesha in this murti look like his face. So Chandesha here is actually Rajendra Chola. And Lord Shiva is seen towering, and there is Parvati sitting. And the expression, unfortunately, because you cannot zoom in, you can't see the expressions. But the expressions on Chandesha's, that is the king's face, are of how would I say, Kritartha acceptance. And the expressions on Lord Shiva's face are of wonderful serenity. Next, please. This is another murti from the Kailash caves. This is Shiva killing Andhakasur. Andhakasur was a demon which was created from darkness. And they say that he cast an evil eye on Mother Parvati. So Lord Shiva got angry. And then he attacked him. And then finally he impaled him on his Trishul. And he kept him like that for many, many, many years till he became really emaciated. And after that, then while dying, Andhakasur, he actually asked for forgiveness, and he was made into a chief Gana of Lord Shiva. But here, it's a huge sculpture. I have another picture where I'm standing there for perspective. Unfortunately, I don't have it, and I'm not good with numbers, but it's a very imposing structure, and you cannot probably see it, but there is Parvati sitting on a stool to the left of the image. And she is depicted by the sculptor in such a way that she's so terrified of her husband's Raudra Rupa that she wants to run away. And his face is very angry. It's very different from that Ananda Tandav Shiva. But with one hand, he's holding her chin tenderly. It's almost like he's telling her, okay, this is my Raudra Rupa, but it's not for you. For you, I'm always your loving husband. The gesture with which he is holding Parvati is so different from his stance, and that mudra is called a Alida mudra, where one leg is straight on the ground and one leg is bent at the knee. And the way the hands are shown, the way the face is shown, it's like this image speaks of Raudra Rasa. And that was one of the things that Ananda Kumaraswamy talks about. He says that temple sculptures or any sculpture or any art in India has to invoke a rasa. The rasika, that's the observer, has to feel that rasa, has to get that experience of what the sculpture is trying to say. And in this murti, it's all about Raudra rasa. Next, please. Now I go to Sri Vishnu sculptures. Again, I could not, I could just go on and on, but we have just 1 hour. So I had to cut short. So unfortunately, I picked only 2 Vishnu Murtis. Someday I would like to do a separate presentation just on the sculptural representation of Sri Vishnu all over India. Next, please. This is a murti that I talked about last time. This is in the caves of Udaygiri. This was built during the Gupta period. This is one of the earliest rock-cut caves in India. It's somewhere near Vidisha. And if you see Sri Vishnu here as Varaha, see the majesty, see the power in his stance, the way he's holding his hand on the waist, standing, the power in his calves, the way the sculptor has shown the muscles in the calf. And it's like compared to him, everybody is looking so small. There are rishis carved on the wall, and Prithvi, who is sitting on his shoulder, is shown so petite because he has just rescued her from Hiranyaksha, and he dived into the earth and he has brought the Mother Earth safely. And this murti is again all about power. It's all about virility. It's all about protection. And it was built like that for a purpose, because this was the time when the Gupta kings had united the area in the Doab between Ganga and Jamuna. So this was their way of saying to the world that like the Lord has rescued Mother Earth, like Sri Vishnu, the Lord, the deity that we worship, that we pray to, like he has rescued Mother Earth from Hiranyaksha, we have ensured that this territory, this piece of Mother Earth, we have rescued it from the bad kings, and it now belongs to us. Next, please. This is a murti in the Sanctum Sanctorum of Somnathpura temple, the temple that I showed you earlier. This is made from one single Gandaki Pashan, the black Pashan, which is considered to be the holiest of all for carving out the main Vigraha in a Sanctum Sanctorum. See the beauty, see the way, it's very delicate. It's a murti of Venugopal. And if you can see the stance, if you can see the grace in the murti, if you see the murti's face, it's a different kind of beauty. It's mellow, it's serene, it is lyrical almost. Next, please. Yeah, Devi Sarvabhuteshu. I am a big admirer of Mahishasura Mardini sculptures, and I just love the power and the strength that the Devi exudes, the divine feminine exudes. So there'll be a lot of sculptures of the Devi in this, because personally, I just love to see Mahishasura Mardini sculptures. Next, please. So this is one of the earliest depictions of Mahishasura Mardini. This is again at the Udaygiri caves, the same caves that I showed you the earlier depiction of the Varaha. You can see that the Devi is holding the Mahisha, and she has the Ayudhas in her hand, and this sculpture is badly damaged. So you can't see the expressions on her face, but you can still see the power in her stance, and it's a very spare murti. There is no ornamentation. It's very simple. It's very the flourishes are just beginning. As the sculptures, as the centuries progress, the sculptures become more and more ornate. There is more focus on jewelry. There is more focus on ayudhas. There is more beautification. Next, please. So this is again another Mahishasur Mardini. Here also, I forgot which temple was it. So here she has one foot on the Mahisha, and here there is, you don't see a man coming out from Mahisha. So this is one of the earliest sculptures. In the later centuries, they started showing Mahishasura as half Mahisha, half buffalo, and a human being's face coming out of it. And in even later years, they started showing Mahishasura as a full man. So the progression became from full animal to half animal, half man to full man. Next, please. This is from Mamallapuram, Mahabalipuram near Chennai. And as you can see here, Mahishasura is shown with a human body, but with a buffalo face. And Durga is sitting on a lion, and she is holding an arrow, and she's just ready. She's taking out arrow from the quiver, and she's just about to shoot at the Mahishasura. And if you see at the feet of the lion, you will see another woman, a warrior. I don't know if you can see it or not. That woman is shown with six packs. Even Durga is shown with a very taut abdomen. Even the Murti of Mother Durga is shown with almost perfect anatomical features. But this woman, you can actually see the six packs on her stomach, and she is holding a sword, and there is a lot of power in her. And Mahishasura he's scared because he didn't he probably thought that this woman, this Durga, this woman can't do anything to him. But he realizes that she has a lot of power. So he wants to run away, which is why his body is turned in the other direction. He is about to run. But at the same time, he also has his ego, and he wants to fight her. So he's still looking at her. He's still looking to fight with her with his club in his hand. Next, please. This is from the temple at Kailash, Ellora temple, cave number 16. And as you can see here, you can see that the Mahishasura is coming out, and she's again aiming her arrow. Durga is again aiming her arrow at Mahishasura. If you enter this temple, Kailashnath temple, you will see that on one side you will see Sri Ganesha, on one side you will see Durga killing Mahishasur, and as you go straight inside, you will see Gajalakshmi straight ahead of you, which you will see later on. Now, why choose these three particular deities in a Shiva temple to welcome the devotees? That is to give you a message that Sri Ganesha stands for wisdom, Durga stands for strength and valor, and Gajalakshmi stands for prosperity. For a kingdom to be truly good, for a king to be truly good and truly powerful and well liked by the people, he needs to have these three attributes. He needs to be wise, he needs to be strong, and he needs to have money. Because if you only have wisdom and strength but no money, you will soon lose your power. If you have strength and money but no wisdom, you'll become a tyrant. And if you have only wisdom and money and no strength, then some other king or somebody, some usurper will come and take away your kingdom. So this king, Krishna one, in this temple, he is a wise king, he's a strong king, and he has a lot of money. That's why he could build a temple like this. Next, please. This is the Durga at the Kailashnath temple, and here she is Mahishasur. So she is shown in a moment of triumph, and her foot is on the lion. The way she is standing, it's like, I've done this. I know, I've got it. That kind of attitude. Next, please. This is a Chola Durga. Again, one of my favorites. I just love the way she's depicted. The ends of her Kativastra, it's actually blowing in the wind. And it's a very difficult thing to represent sculpturally because sculpture is a very static medium. And see, her hands are coming out of the rock. You know, there is space between her hand and the rock. and she's about to, you feel like she's about to move her hand with the club and she's going to attack Mahishasura with it. Here Mahishasura is shown as a human being with just two horns. Next please. This is Saraswati, and it's a very beautiful Saraswati. This is the Saraswati at the Gangaikonda Cholapuram temple, and she's very stark and simple. There is minimum ornamentation, but there is a lot of grace. She is holding a pot, a kamandalu in her hand. She's holding a akshamala in another hand, and her face is shown very beautiful. She's wearing a Yajñopavid, and she's sitting on a lotus, Shweta Padmasana. Next, please. This is the Gajalakshmi that I was talking about at Ellora in Kailash temple, where the elephants are actually passing. They have a proper conveyor belt system going on. So the top two elephants are emptying the kalashas on the Devi, on Sri Lakshmi, and the bottom two elephants are actually passing on the next kalashas to her. So this cycle continues and the Devi gets abhishekams continuously. Next please. Unfortunately, the face has been vandalized, so you cannot see the features. Next please. Now I'll come to, these were the murtis of our deities in the temples. Now I'll show you some of the other things that our temple sculptors have tried. Next please. So this is from the Utsav Mandapam outside the Varadaraj Perumal temple in Kanchi. And if you see the chain that's hanging, it's a chain that is made from a single stone. And those rings that actually carved out of a single stone. And there is no joint in the rings. So can you, and it's a chain that moves. And there are theories I've read of, and a lot of people told me today when I shared it on Twitter also, that earlier they used to keep some kind of crystals at the end of the chain, and that would light up the place of the temple. That was their mechanism. I'm not sure about that, but that is what that is what is also being said. But to me, the fact that it's a chain, it's like a link within link within link, and the link has no joint, and the chain actually moves with the wind. It's incredible. Even today, you cannot think of trying this out even in a relatively softer medium like wood or even Play-Doh for that matter. Actually, if you just take a chunk of Play-Doh and try to do this, you probably wouldn't be able to do it. But how they did it with a hard material like stone, God only knows. And what is sad is that this priceless Utsav Mandapam and this priceless sculpture, the HRCE, which is the agency from Tamil Nadu, the government agency which is maintaining the temple, they randomly stuck tube lights everywhere. And you know, it's like you, on one hand you have this sublime beauty which was created hundreds and hundreds of years ago by our ancestors, and then you will see something that is destroyed by the complete callousness of some government officials. The mind boggles. Next please. This is a ceiling from Somnathpura temple. It is supposed to be inspired by a banana flower. If you've seen a banana flower, you would have seen the shape. And again, this is all carved, very, very intricately carved and fitted in together. We have all heard about how Michelangelo slept on a scaffolding and he painted the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. But how many of us even know about temple ceilings like this? And to paint a fresco is far easier than to carve out something like this while lying down on your back and ensuring that, you know, there is no scope for error here. Everything has to be done at one stroke. So to be able to visualize something like this, to get inspiration from a banana leaf and to make a ceiling like this, it's incredible. Next, please. This picture is not mine. I forgot where I got it from. But if anybody knows so that I can credit it properly, please do let me know. I just took it because it's just so beautiful. It is from the Jain temple of Ranakpur. And the way the loops are done, this is also a ceiling piece. in one single stone. The way it's been conceived and the way it's been executed, today you cannot even think of something so intricate or something so beautiful. Even in painting, I mean, try just doing it with pencil and paper, you'll not be able to do it. Even if you're a good artist, you will not be able to do it. And this is a 3D piece that's carved out from one single piece of stone. Next, please. This is the layers, the bottom layers of the Jagati of a Hoysala temple. So every single Hoysala temple will have the same aesthetic and it will have the same kind of layers. Now the layers also have a meaning. The bottommost layer will always have elephants because elephants are about strength and stability. The next layer is about mounted cavalrymen. They are talking about, they're talking about the of or the armed might of the kingdom. Is the lotus, which is supposed to be a symbol of prosperity, because lotuses grow only when there is water, and when there is water there is rain. That means that the kingdom is prosperous. Next is one layer of secular life. So you will have common people being displayed there, dancers, musicians. So you can get a picture of how social life used to be at that point of time. Next is a layer of makaras, which are imaginary animals, which are basically about protection. The king is supposed to be able to provide protection to the people. And the topmost layer is of hamsas, which are birds, which are about the purity of mind. So kingdom has to be strong, the king has to be brave, the kingdom has to be prosperous, the king should protect the people, and above all, the king has to have the purity of mind to be able to rule. Only then he is a just king. Next, please. Next, please. Next, please. This is from the Rani Ki Vav in Patan. These are windows. These may look like paintings to you, but they're actually carvings made out of stone. And what is interesting is that the same patterns are repeated in the famous Patan Patola. The previous one, please. Previous one. Manojji, the previous one. Yeah, this one. So this pattern is actually even today being woven in the famous Patola of Patan in Ikat technique. And you will see this give and take between temple sculptures and textile motifs a lot. You will see that in Kanchipuram, you will see that in Odisha, you will see that in practically every textile center. There is a lot of back and forth from the temple motifs, and depending upon the peacocks on the Kanchipuram saris are taken from the temples of Madurai, the kind of particular flourishes that they have. It's almost exactly from the temples of the Cholas or from the temples of the Pandyas. Whereas here you can see the patterns are the exact Ikat patterns that you see repeated even today. Similarly, if you go to Odisha, you will see that their patterns will be like fish, will be like Shankha, will be like Chakra, will be like Rudraksha, which you see on their temples. So temple motifs, temple architecture motifs, and textile motifs have always had a synergy in India. Next, please. This is from a Jain temple in Polo Forests. These are grills made out of stone, and if you can see that they are not very well maintained, unfortunately, but if you'll see that every grill is different. It's differently carved, and it's carved out of a single piece of stone. Again, if you wanted a shortcut, why would you even bother carving out this little square, each in a different design? You just do one uniform design, right? Just do bars or just do squares and get done with it. Why would you have this? How many are there? 20? You would have 20 different designs in one grid, and like that you have about 4 such braids, and no pattern is repeated. So just imagine the permutation and combination that the sculpture may have imagined just in geometric patterns in trying to just, this is a purely decorative, it doesn't serve any spiritual or religious purpose, it's purely a decorative motive, but even there they reach such great creative heights. Next please. Oh, this is again one of my favorites. It's called Shilpa Shlesha or Pun and Sculpture. And if you see, it's a composite animal. It's an animal. If you see it from the left, you will see that it's a buffalo. And if you see it on the right, you will see it's an elephant. And the face is the same, but the bodies are different. So you'll see this kind of play in stuff, play in stone a lot. You will see it in Hampi as well, see it in Darasuram as well. You will see it in some temples in the north as well. So this is, there is a deeper spiritual meaning as well. But this is like the artist, just having fun and trying something creative and saying that, different things. See, I have so much of command over my techniques. Next, please. So this is, so far I've only talked about what we had, the greatness of our ancestors, how they built temples of such breathtaking beauty, no matter where, from the Martanda Sun Temple or from the Sun Temple to Multan, which unfortunately doesn't exist, and the Martan Sun Temple in Kashmir, only a shell exists. It's very sad to see that. And till the temples of Kanchipuram, our ancestors built full sublime temples. They invested a lot of spiritual energy, they invested a lot of money, they invested a lot of time. All these temples took generations of kings, generations of sculptors to build something so beautiful. So this is what we had. Now I will take you to what they did. Who they are, and I know. Next, please. This is from the Chaussati Yogini temple in Tarapur in Odisha. This is a temple meant for 64 yoginis. It's a circular temple. At one point of time, yogini worship was very common. It's a tantric worship in that part of India. And this temple is circular. So if you get a view from the drone, the entire temple will come to Lingam. And there are 64 yogini statues, now only 63. One of them has been stolen. And the main deity is Chamundeshwari. And all around her, there are these niches. And in these niches are these 63 yoginis. So this is what I was told is a Varahi because her Vahana is a Varaha. But see how beautiful she is. See her hairstyle. See, she had a bow and an arrow in her hands. Unfortunately, the Islamic invaders ensured that neither the bow nor the arrow survived. And her nose has been hacked off. Her leg has been hacked off. And this is just mindless. This is just destruction for the sake of destruction. Next, please. This hurts me even more. She would have been a very, very, very beautiful Apsara with flowing hair, with a lot of confidence in her body, in a dancing mudra. This is a temple. This is a Parmar temple near Vidisha in some remote village. Very few people know. The whole temple looks like it's about to crumble. It is for namesake under ASI, but it's not being maintained at all. But what hurts me, and it really deeply hurt me, I actually felt like crying when I saw this murti, is how brutally that murti has been vandalized. The breasts have been hacked off, the nose has been hacked off, and it is very conscious. It's not random strokes, okay? It's like specifically some parts of anatomy have been defaced, some specific parts of anatomy. What really hurt me is that they did this to the stone apsaras outside a temple. Can you imagine what they may have done to the real women of that time that they just took as spoils of war? Next, please. Again, from Polo Forest, Gujarat. So from Odisha to Madhya Pradesh to now Gujarat, you see the situation of the murtis. You see how they've been destroyed, they've been hacked, they've been mutilated, they've been desecrated. Next, please. This you all know. It's from Kashi. You can even see the temple wall, which is part of the mosque that Aurangzeb destroyed the temple of Kashi Vishwanath to build this monstrosity. And it's there as a slap on every Hindu's face every time you go to Kashi. I would advise everybody to read a book called Avrana, in which there is this account of how this temple was destroyed. It's disturbing. It doesn't let you sleep, but this is something that we all need to know. This is something that we all need to tell our children. This is all something that we need to understand. What they did to us, what they did to our temples. Next, please. Okay, this is what they did. This is what the Islamic invaders did, some centuries ago. But let's look at what we did from 1947 onwards. Next, please. This is outside the Darasuram temple, which is a World Heritage Site. It's a living temple, which has been living for more than 1,000 years. It is under the control of ASI. If you can see that there is a epigraphic inscription, which is in the ancient Grantha script of Tamil. And this is how it is being maintained. There are naked wires around it. They're obscuring there are nails put into a 1,000-year-old inscription. Next, please. See what I mean? And this is a World Heritage Site, okay? This is not even your obscure temple which is being maintained by some ill-funded government department. This is under the Archaeological Survey of India. You know what the Archaeological Survey of India spends its money on? They want to spruce up the coronation site of Aurangzeb. Yeah, the same Aurangzeb who destroyed the Kashi Vishwanath temple and built its monstrosity. They spent some crores of rupees in lighting up Humayun's tomb in Delhi. And this is how 1,000-year-old temples are lying. There is a number written in indelible marker on that rock in which there is an inscription in Grantha Tamil. Next, please. This is also from the same temple. As you can see, there are naked wires. There's a tube light, which is stuck randomly with wires somewhere. And I have literally thousands of pictures like this, which have our old temples, which are controlled by the ASI. And there is not even a basic attention to hygiene. There is no effort to keep it clean. There are big lawns, and there is absolutely no maintenance. Anybody can come in and you just can be a gawking tourist, and this is how we treat our heritage. Whereas the Islamic tombs, which are not even 300-year-old in Delhi, they are beautifully maintained. They get crores and crores of rupees every year to put up lighting. I just don't understand this. When I went to Vidisha, there are 4 or 5 sites in that particular village, and those sites are spread over at least 4 or 5 kilometers. And for 5 sites, they have one guy on contract. He gets paid daily wages. He's supposed to be looking after them. He's one frail old man of 55 or so who hasn't even been paid properly. And he has a cycle that he used to go from one side to another. What can he do? How can he maintain? How can one person maintain 5 temples spread over 5 kilometers? And these are more than 1,000-year-old temples. Next, please. Okay, so we have seen what we were. We have seen what they did to us. We have seen what we have done to us. And now I talk about what we can do. Because by nature, I'm an optimistic person, and I don't like to leave you on a plaintive, melancholy note saying that, oh, we were so great and then we lost it and now we can't do anything. The picture is so bad. What we can do, and all of us can do a lot here. There are ways to it. I am a mom of 3 teenagers who are in high school right now. So I'm a big fan of mnemonics, and they help you remember. So I have a mnemonic for all of you about what we can do. And the mnemonic is very simple. It's called Hindu, Hindu. So what does Hindu stand for? H is help. Help each other, help the artisans, We still have living traditions of sculpture in Gujarat. We have temple builders called Sompatis, which build temples in traditional style, following the exact same stapati tradition. We have stapatis in Odisha, we have stapatis in Karnataka, we have stapatis in Tamil Nadu, who have been passing this knowledge from father to son, from mother to daughter for generations together. What we can do is to help them. We can patronize them, we can buy their fare, and whenever we want to gift something to someone, it doesn't have to be a murti. If you're a devout Hindu and you don't want to give a murti to someone who you know is probably not going to be able to look after it, but you can take secular sculptures like elephants or something else, or vases or whatever. But it's important that this tradition should continue. So help the living tradition survive, help each other. I is for interrogate, question. Every time you see a ASI site and you see monstrosities like this, you will see random steel railings installed somewhere, or a nail hit into a wall and some clock with somebody's name on it, or fans with naked wires, or just bulbs dangling somewhere. Ask, interrogate, ask questions to the persons in charge there, and ask questions on social media to ASI, ask questions to Ministry of Culture, ask questions to the ministers, file RTI petitions, ask them how much money they spent on the upkeep of Hindu temples in a year, and how much money they spend on the upkeep of Humayun's tomb. The disparity will shock you, and when you talk about this disparity publicly, and if you have enough numbers, then we can make a difference. We can make the government sit up and take notice. So help each other, help the artisans, interrogate, question, name and notice. The N is for name and notice. So whenever you find something, always be on the lookout of noticing. Whenever you go to a temple, any temple, don't just go to the temple, do a 2-minute darshan quickly and come out. Notice the things, notice the murti, talk to the pujari, ask him about the Sthala Purana, ask him about the stories. Even if the temple is a modern temple, it will still have a story. It will have a story about who built it, who destroyed it, who rebuilt it, why it's been built in such a way. So notice these things, name these temples. The D stands for documentation. Document. All of us in India, we have temples, small temples in our vicinity, which are probably some 100 years old. But they have never been documented because they're really little street side shrines. So what we can do is we can document them. And these days with video cameras and data, we all can turn into filmmakers. We all can write blogs. We all can take great pictures and put them on Instagram. But document them. Say that a temple like this existed. So next time when for some reason somebody wants to demolish the temple, you have documented proof that a temple existed here and this temple cannot go. The last point is to understand the U in Hindu. Understand our sculpture, understand our roots, understand our traditions, go back, read, educate yourself, and only by understanding the art, only by understanding what we are, only by understanding where we come from, can we do something about the future. This is what we can do. Next, please. See, these are all modern sculptures from the same living traditions that I have in my house. This Sri Vishnu is from green soapstone. It is done by a national award winning sculptor from Odisha. And if you see, it's a very tiny, it's only some 8 inches tall murti. But if you see the folds of Sri Vishnu's dhoti, the way Lakshmi is sitting, the way his the lotus is growing from his belly button, and there is a really tiny Brahma there sitting, and the way the sculptor is carved, the gada, the coils of the Sheshanaga, it's really incredible. And this is a living tradition. This is a tradition that these are the kind of murtis today also. If you can walk into a Utkalika showroom or a Pumpuhar showroom in Tamil Nadu, you'll find murtis like that. You'll find better murtis like that. Patronize them. Help the artisans, because they are still following the same canonical traditions. They are still measuring the murti in the same way. They're still following the same shastras and agamas. And they are also leading the same kind of spiritual austere lifestyle that gives them the spiritual strength, just like I said at the beginning of my presentation, to make a murti like this. Next please. This is again another murti in my garden. It's a Saraswati. It's also from Odisha. It's also from a national award winning artisan. And if you can see that it's the same tradition, the way she's standing in Tribanga, and this is all from a single rock. And the murti has been carved in keeping to the same tradition, same spiritual discipline. Everything is the same that was there when the ancestors of these existing Stapatis, they built the Konark temple. Next please. This is the last slide I'm going to show you today. This is a wooden sculpture of Vishwaroop Darshan. It is in the Kaveri showroom on MG Road in Bangalore. I don't know if it is still there or it's sold out. But it's one of the most beautiful sculptures I've seen. It's a full 3D sculpture. I mean, even if you go behind, they couldn't do pictures from behind. But even if you go behind this murti, you will find that the murti is circular and there is full carving there. And even the small little faces, they're only 1 inch in the Prabhavali, and in the subsidiary figures, there are incidents from Sri Krishna's life carved all over in little circles. So in these little circles, the characters that they have, like in Kalya Mardan, they have Krishna's friends around him. And these are tiny, tiny, almost as big as my nail, the faces, but you can actually make out their expressions. It's a sculpture that you have to see it to believe it. It's done by a traditional sculptor from Kumta, I think, from coastal Karnataka. And I go there every time I go to Bangalore. I go to the Kaveri showroom just to have a look at this murti, and it's just incredibly beautiful. What I'm trying to tell you is that it's a living tradition. It still lives in India. We still have artisans of shilpis of such marvelous skill and devotion both, who are creating something that is so incredibly beautiful. So please patronize them. Please ensure that this craft doesn't die. We don't build big temples anymore. Tell me how many big temples, like really huge temples we have built in the last 70 years, except for the Swami Narayan temples and hopefully the Ram Mandir that's going to come up in Ayodhya. We haven't really built huge temples. Okay, people build small temples in their neighborhood. They will build individual family temples. But we don't have the money or wherewithal to build such huge temples like the Periya Kovil or or even the Somnathpura temple for that matter. But we have the traditional knowledge. And if the traditional knowledge is not patronized, the traditional knowledge is going to die out. Luckily, in the US, a lot of temples are being built using the same traditional techniques. And you have Stapatis from India who actually go to the US and build and assemble and do the full temple building process there. But we have to ensure that we have to realize that it's a living tradition. Despite the marauding attacks by the Islamic invaders, despite the break in the tradition has still survived in great many parts of India. And it is our responsibility as Hindus, it is our duty to our children and their children to ensure that this sublime art survives, because it is not just a craft, it's an art. It's a spiritual discipline. Our temples are a bridge that joins us from our humdrum everyday life to the sublime divine. It is the union of the microcosm with the macrocosm, the journey from the profane to the profound. And our sculptors and our Stapatis are an integral part of that journey. So my request to you, मैं हाथ जोड़ के विनती करती हूँ आप सबसे कि ensure that you take your children to see the temples. Let them see what our ancestors have built. Explain to them. If they ask you who destroyed it, answer their questions. Tell them honestly. Tell them the names. And remember the Hindu of Hindu activism. Help, interrogate, name and notice, document, and understand. Thank you. Namaste.
Wonderful pictures, Shefali ji. It actually felt like we are on a journey to see the temples all over India. It was really sad to see all the destructions and, also the way it's currently maintained. But your mnemonic in the end had a much needed positive message of the hour. And we really hope that we all would, kind of follow it. Thank you
Thank you,
again so
Shweta.
much for doing
Thank
this.
you.
We love the session. And I think I speak on behalf of all our listeners today because they've been posting comments and questions. So let's take on a few questions, Shefali ji.
Sure, I'm fine.
Perfect. So the first question is, if you can elaborate again on why it was essential for the Sthapatis to have the Vedic knowledge, the Atharvaveda and all of that, to be able to sculpt.
Because in order to conceptualize the deity, they needed to have the knowledge of the Puranas, the stories, the sculptures. It was not just a sculptor was being taught, okay, you have to sculpt Sri Vishnu, so you just have to do Shankha Chakra Gada and all that. No, he needed to know who the deity was. The sculptor needed to be one with the deity. It was a meditation process. It was the process of focusing. It was sadhana, basically, that the Sthapati had to do. And for that, he needed to have a certain spiritual base, which is why he needed to know the scriptures.
So a related question is, what was the rationale adopted by kings for the kind of sculpture they would have in each temple?
Most kings, like all Hindus, most kings had their own Ishtadevatas. So they built temples dedicated to that Ishtadevata, but they also had the pantheon of other deities. Like even in the great Chola temples, and the Cholas were great Shiva devotees, you will still have sculptures of Sri Vishnu, because even though the main temple is dedicated to Lord Shiva, there is always an attempt to how do you say, to reconcile between the different panthas. So the Udaygiri, the Guptas were Vaishnava kings. So you'll find a lot of Sri Vishnu sculptures. You will find Vishnu as Sheshachayi, Vishnu as Varaha. Even the Vijayanagara kings were Vaishnava kings. So you will see a lot more Vishnu sculptures. There are a lot more temples dedicated to Vishnu. But that doesn't mean that there are no temples dedicated to Lord Shiva. They did. The kings did patronize, even if the king's Ishtadevata was Sri Vishnu, the king did build temples to Lord Shiva.
Right. Is there any specific reason that temples in North, South, and Orissa adopt a different style?
That I think just developed over. Everybody's sense of aesthetic is different. People experimented. They found that this particular stone or this particular Stapati's knowledge. So it happened over time. It's not like somebody sat down and said, okay, I'm going to develop this style and I'm going to develop this style. It just happened gradually. There are temples called Vesara style temples, which are sort of an amalgamation of both. So they take some features from the Dravida style temples, some features from the Nagara style temples. So there was always a little bit of give and take. There is something called a Karnataka Dravida style, which is the Hoysala temples are Karnataka Dravida style. So they are Dravida style, but there are always their own Karnataka flourishes, So that style is known as the Karnataka Dravida style.
So they kind of evolved. So another question is, what are the names of the attire that most male and female sculptures which are depicted on the temples, they're wearing? I don't know if you would know.
Again, it depends on different kind of places, but mostly they'll wear a dhoti, either a full dhoti that goes all the way down to their ankles, or a half dhoti, which you will see in the Varaha of that I showed you in Udaygiri, up to the knee. Women's, again, attire was tight-fitting dhoti, like cloth from the bottom, the kati vastra, and many times they wore a breast cloth called a kucha bandha, which was the predecessor of the sari blouse, basically. Yes. And they will always have a uttariya, which you will see fluttering, because aesthetically, it balances the picture. So you'll see that whenever a deity is in a process of fighting, like Durga is about to attack Mahishasur, you'll see that her uttariya is billowing in the breeze, and that gives that nice balance to the composition.
Yes, that's true. The next question is about temples in Jammu and Kashmir. You showed us pictures of destruction in different parts of India, but you think this Jammu and Kashmir saw massive destruction because they were right on the frontiers?
Yeah, they did. Unfortunately, I don't have good pictures of temples in Kashmir. I wanted to show the Martanda temple, but I didn't have good pictures. I wanted to show the pictures of the Sharda Devi temple of Kashmir Purvasini, the original Sharda Devi temple. But unfortunately, I didn't have good images. Someday, I would want in my lifetime to be able to go to the Sharda Devi temple. I don't know.
Yes.
If somebody is listening, please say Tathastu.
Yes, we also definitely want to see the Sharda Peeth and heard so much about it. So what impact did you think the infighting of Hindu kings had on temples on those times? Did they
You're talking about infighting pre-Islamic rule or infighting during or after Islamic rule? Infighting pre-Islamic rule, I told you already, it didn't really affect the temples. I mean, okay, there were, and the way the kings fought was like, okay, this king went for Digvijaya and he defeated the other king, but that didn't mean that he took over that other king's kingdom completely. They accepted a nominal vassalship of this Digvijaya king, this emperor, and then they gave him money and gifts and whatever, and the king went back to his kingdom, and the vassal king ruled as a sovereign king. He was not told, okay, now I'm going to kill you and all your sons and take your wife as a slave and this kingdom belongs to me. That never happened.
Yes, I think most of the time they used to take the murtis and they used to build another beautiful temple.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. So is there a way, there's a specific question that about the Khajuraho temples, which are so savagely destroyed. So is there a way that we can restore these temples? And also there is lack of guidelines for, foreign tourists. So the respect that these structures deserve, that is not there. So how can, and probably which authority is responsible for better guidelines?
See, the ASI took a decision. This was actually the ASI under the British rule took a decision to not reconstruct. I mean, Alexander Cunningham took a decision, but then he was never mentally invested. Those temples were an object of art curiosity for him, right? He was not a devotee. So it didn't matter to him whether temples would be restored or take that conscious policy decision. But that policy decision that the ASI took of only repairing if the temple is crumbling, but not restoring it fully, keeping it the way it is. If it's broken, just leave it broken. That policy has been continued till now. But having said that, it also depends on the particular ASI, that section in charge. If that person has a lot of autonomy and that person can do a lot. We all know that KK Muhammad, what he did with the Bateshwar group of caves, it was a complete pile of rubble, but he rebuilt it and it was in a totally dacoit infested area. So he actually, with the limited funds that he had, he put those temples together, he rebuilt them, and he rebuilt the whole complex. So if a determined archaeologist wants to do it, they can do it. But unfortunately, most of the time, ASI, and I don't want to, see, I have a lot of respect for people who have done a lot of work with ASI, like Bibi Lal or Sri Maniji. They have done tremendous work. But right now, whenever I see the ASI controlled sites, I see huge lawns which are beautifully maintained. But what about the site? And why is there so much of disparity between Hindu sites and the Islamic tombs that you see in Delhi? I recently read a report that ASI wants to revamp Aurangzeb's coronation site. Really, Aurangzeb coronation site, nobody wants him. Even the Muslims don't want to remember him. So why does the ASI want to spend money on it?
Yes, true. And a related question is it possible to have better guides in temples, like the way you explain the, ideals and sculptures? So if we have people with explaining the same amount of details, a lot of knowledge gaps would be bridged.
See, right now there are individuals who are doing it. Like even I conduct trips for Swarajya Heritage, but I do it only for Ellora because that is something very close to my heart. So I take people to Kailash Cave because that matters a lot to me, and I get very emotional and passionate about it. So there are individual trips. Swarajya organizes trips to the Chola temples also, to the Pallava temples also. But having said that, the ASI trained guides, which are located at different sites, they actually have more knowledge than you think. But they're told by the ASI to sanitize the history, and they will eventually tell you, they'll minimize the brutalities, and they will tell you some goli like external invaders did it. So in Somnathpura, I went once. So that guy told me that external invaders. So I said, where did the external invaders come from? Who are these external invaders? Did they come from Europe? Did they come from Germany? Did they come from US? Did they have names? Do you know the names? So he said, yeah, it was Malik Kafur and his army. So I said, why don't you name it? So he said, we are told not to name. We are specifically told because you don't know who is coming to visit the temples. So we are told not to tell them the real history. But the ASI guides do know. So next time you go to these sites and you hire a guide, you tell the guide that I'll pay you extra if you want, but you show me the real stuff. You tell me the real stuff. Like if you go to Qutub Minar,
Right.
all the guides know that Qutub Quwwat al-Islam mosque, I mean, it's written there. They have a epigraphy right there saying that this mosque has been built with the remains of a 27 destroyed Hindu and Jain temples. But the ASI guide will not tell you that. He will just tell you, and I have heard it being said with my own ears, this temple is an example of syncretic Hindu-Muslim architecture. What syncretic architecture? It's been rebuilt from destroyed temples, and it's written there. But still the guide will tell you that because that's what the guide has been told. And most of the people who come to the Qutub Minar complex, they don't want to hear the real history. But if you ask the guide privately and if you question, that's where the interrogate part comes. Even in public, you ask them, this is not true. I know the true history. Please tell me the true history. They'll tell you.
Wow. So it is kind of like institutionalized. So that is quite a big barrier. Yeah. So last question, Shefali ji, what is your opinion? What should be that one factor that we should learn from our ancient temple architectures?
That art has a greater purpose. That it's not just to look good. It is not just to say, wow, this is so beautiful and just move on. Art has a purpose. Temples have a purpose which is greater than your or my life. The purpose is the greater spiritual purpose of yoga, that almost yogic purpose of the individual soul becoming one with the universal soul, with the Brahman, the union of the Atman and the Brahman. So that is something that every time you go to a temple, just go with a thought in your mind that you are going to the temple to seek union with the universal soul, and the whole experience will be different for you. And also attend a webinar next Saturday.
Yes.
That will have a lot more in detail about different architectural styles, different technical styles. Today, I just wanted to take you on a journey to the temples that I like and why I like the temples and how it has made me a better person. It has given me a better understanding. So the Hindu mnemonic, please don't forget, it makes a difference.
It does. It does. No, definitely we'll remember that. And it was, again, a very fascinating session, Shefali ji. I will now hand over to my fellow team member, Manu Khajuria ji, for some concluding remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Shefali ji. It's, I mean, there are no words after you finished the talk because your passion sort of jumps out of the screen and you have literally taken us on a journey where we have gone across centuries, and then the jaw-dropping moments when we looked at the stunning pictures you shared, and then goosebumps at the sheer beauty, and then also tears. I had tears in my eyes when you showed how it's been destroyed, but you've left us on a high note as to what we can do, which is very, very important. And I think I would say on behalf of our team at FISI that this journey with you has just begun. We've had you the second time. We want to have you many more times. And I thank you for coming again. And I thank Indic Academy as well. And I hope that we will, you mentioned Vishnu, that you would probably do a session on just that one day. So maybe FISI will be able to host you again, and probably many, many, many more times. So thank you very much. And
I would be happy to.
Yes, and I would like to remind whoever is listening that you have a webinar on next Saturday on the 20th on temples. You are curating and hosting it, so people can hear more from you on that day as well. So thank you, Shefali ji, on behalf of FISI team. Thank you, Indika. Namaskar.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Namaste.
Thank you all. I'll close the call now. Thank you.
Thank you.